Hey guys, I'm Pat Kelly. Okay, in this problem, they give us a function. They ask us to determine if this function has an inverse, and of course if it does, they want to know what it is. You got to be careful with this one. A couple little bumps in the road, but don't worry, I'm going to help you out. And I'll start the way I would always start any kind of find the inverse type problem is by taking the original function, f of x equals this x plus 3 parentheses squared, and that restricted domain of x being greater than or equal to negative 3, that's part of the function. Don't lose it. It's one of the things you have to be careful with. I'm going to start this problem by rewriting the function as y instead of f of x. Okay. And I'm going to include that restricted domain. But I'm also going to ask you to join me here is stop and think a little bit about what's going on with the y values. Okay, if they give us this restricted domain where x is only negative 3 or bigger, let's think about what's going to happen with the y values. Because what I want is some kind of statement about the y's similar to what I have with this statement about the x's. You'll see why. The y values, let's start with the negative 3 for x. If I put that in here, negative 3 plus 3 is 0, squared is 0. So I know right at that boundary, that border, that or equal to, it's going to be 0. The y value is going to be 0. And then x is supposed to be getting bigger than that. So negative 2, negative 1, 0. I'll throw a 0 in here. I like that. That's easy. 0 plus 3, but squared is 9. And what I just figured out is the lowest y is going to go when x is on the boundary is 0, and as x gets bigger, the y values are getting bigger. I put a 0 in and y value is up to a 9, right? So my y's are going to be greater than or equal to 0. It's actually a range that we just figured out. Here's how it comes into play. Now let's proceed the way we would with any kind of find the inverse problem. We have a y equals expression, and what we're going to do is switch x's and y's. And I like to separate with a dash, dash, dash line because the step I'm taking from here down to here doesn't necessarily make any kind of algebraic sense. But what I'm doing is wherever I see a y, I replace it with x. Wherever I see an x, I replace it with y. And you got to do this all the way across the board here. So x greater than or equal to negative 3 becomes y greater than or equal to negative 3. And this is why I wanted to have a handle on what the y's were doing, because now that's going to be what the x's are doing. Okay, continue. You do that switching of x's and y's because now you're looking to solve this equation for y. So I'll square root both sides, which means I will have a plus or minus square root of x. And I pause for a little bit. That concerns me. We're not supposed to have plus or minuses when we find these inverses. We'll see. This equals gets rid of those parentheses because I took the square root. And my last step then is just to subtract the 3 over. And if you don't mind, I'll switch sides here. Subtracting the 3 over, I'll write it first as a minus 3, and then pick back up with these guys, the plus or minus square root of x. Okay. All right. Now when we're finding inverses of functions, we do the switch. We try to solve algebraically. But even in the directions, they say, determine whether this function has an inverse. And so if we get down to a plus or minus, an ambiguity, an uncertainty, we usually say there's no inverse. You're not allowed to have that ambiguity. But because I know that my y value's here, and I say here, that's from this point of our work down, we know that our y values are bigger than or equal to negative 3, which means this y is not going to be smaller than a minus 3. So here's your minus 3. You are not going to subtract. You know that this is actually plus, because you know y has to be bigger than or equal to minus 3. Whew, okay, so our final answer here now then is f inverse of x equals, and I grab that work we just did, but I don't have the ambiguity of plus or minus. I know that it's a plus, square root of x, and comma, you also have a restricted domain. So x greater than or equal to 0. And that's my answer. Okay? A little tricky, a little bit for you to think about, but hope that helps, because you'll see similar problems on your own when you go and do your homework.